listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
So after writing so many essays, it finally came to me that I was using the same process over and over, and I was using a similar system. And then I kind of reduced this down to an acronym, and then I gave this acronym to my students, and they started writing coherent, high-scoring essays almost immediately. And I was incredibly happy. But that was just the basics. That was just the beginning. And since then, that has evolved into the C2 template, which students are using day in, day out. But before I discovered this easy to follow system, I'd had a few embarrassing situations with students asking me questions that I couldn't answer. And that, as you know, for all the students who've been listening to a lot of tutorials, that is why I started IELTS podcast, because I started asking tutors, I started asking professional linguistic experts, ex-IELTS examiners. I just started asking them what they were using to help their students pass, and how they could get their students to speak confidently, like professional speakers and all of this. And then eventually I was testing what worked, what didn't work. I was writing out hundreds of essays, and I found what worked. And then this is how IELTS Podcast was born, and this is how I stumbled across this system for writing high-scoring, coherent essays almost automatically. So I just wanted to share that before we jumped into today's episode, which is what is a good score for IELTS. And today's episode, Daphne is going to be joining us. So how are you doing today, Daphne?
Hi, Ben. Hi, everybody. I think that's so cool, your story. I think that's absolutely brilliant. That, I love that epiphany, that moment you had of, actually, this is it. I've got it.
Yeah.
How to write this essay is fantastic.
I was so excited, really. And I was like, wow, is it really that simple? And I was like, it can't be that simple, honestly. And then I gave it to a few students, and when they followed that system, it wasn't perfect first time. Okay, it took a few modifications, but when I gave it to them, it instantly became much clearer, and that kind of like frustration about what do I write, or I can't get any ideas, and am I contradicting myself with these two different paragraphs, these two different sentences? Am I writing too much? All of those issues just kind of like, I wouldn't say evaporated, but definitely reduced. And that's actually, once I started sharing that, and once we started getting feedback from students, I started and I get the feedback from the students saying, hey, pass my exam. That's when we started doing the interviews. Because if you look back in the past episodes, I'm only interviewing teachers, and it's not until like the 50th episode or something. It's not until a good period of time until I start interviewing the students, because when I started, I didn't have a system in place. So anyway, let's talk about what we're going to, what students will learn in this episode. We're going to look at what the scores really mean and what you need for visas and study. And this will help you understand your results, your IELTS results, and it'll also help you set personal goals. And I've got an important thing I want to say about goals versus systems, which I'll get to later. So what exactly does a 7 mean, or a 6.5?
This mythical 7. When I first started getting into IELTS, Ben, all I could hear everybody was band 7, band 7, band 7, band 7. I thought to myself, what is this band 7 all about? But it really is a thing. Everybody wants to get this band 7 because band 7 opens a lot of doors. But at the same time, unfortunately, the kind of flip side to that is that you realize how difficult it is to get this band 7, because the whole way these exam is marked and the skills that you have to show is really complicated. But so what does a band 7 really mean?
Daphne, sorry to interrupt you, but I remembered when I was talking with Maria, and she'd taken, I think it was the IELTS indicator test, because of COVID and all of this. But what she said really stuck out in my mind. She was like, she was saying something like, I'm not quoting it verbatim, but she said, I was so frustrated with IELTS, and it really felt like I was in a dark place, in a hole, but then I took a step back and I realized, okay, there's plenty more going on in my life than just IELTS, you know? And I thought that perspective was so wise, and it must be so useful for students, because I know just from reading the emails from the students, and when they send in their essays for correction, and they're usually like, oh, Ben, can you really help me with this? I've taken the exam 10 times. And like, it's really easy to sort of like get this tunnel vision around the IELTS. So just remember that, okay, your goal is a 7, but that there's your whole life is going on as well. And I know it is the ticket, but just try and put it all in perspective. You know, don't just get this tunnel vision on IELTS, because you really piling on the pressure on yourself when you start getting this tunnel vision. So just take a step back, and you know, just remember, it's one part of the jigsaw. It's not the jigsaw piece, the most important in the world. It might be at that time, but remember, there's lots of other parts of the jigsaw that you need to complete as well.
I love that. That's Ben doing his kind of looking after everybody advice. I think that's really sensible. Yeah, you're right. It can get overwhelming, and you know, especially if you, as you say, if you've done the exam a lot and you've got 6.5. 6.5, hey, is a good result. Goodness me, 6.5 is a really good upper intermediate user. The problem is that the band 7 is what's asked for so many qualifications, isn't it?
Absolutely. And later on in this tutorial, we'll talk about 6.5 and a 7. But traditionally, 7 has been like the gold standard. But nowadays, I think there's a little bit of flexibility. But we'll talk about that later. So just briefly, a 7 is considered sort of like a good user. 8 is very good user. 9 is an expert. Band 6 is roughly a competent one. I think the best description is probably obviously going to come from the official site, takeieltsbritishcouncil.org. And just for example, an overall IELTS band 8 score implies you have you have a fully operational command of the language with only occasional unsystematic inaccuracies and inappropriate usage. You may understand some things in unfamiliar situations, and you handle complex, detailed arguments well. And that's taken officially from the IELTS, the official website. So I think that's a good guideline.
It is a good guideline, and I'd absolutely stress that it's really important to get familiar with the band score descriptors, which we do recommend, and quite often we mention that when we're doing the essay correction feedbacks. Is, you know, you need to, it's worth taking the time to have a look at this and understand what the examiner's looking for, and what this means, this band 8 or band 7. Then, and if I can just quickly highlight a few things from the band 7, which is a good user. And the description there has good command of English, but also occasional inaccuracies, misunderstandings, or inappropriate words, and can use complex language quite well, and understands detailed argumentation quite well. So I think the key there is only occasional errors, and uses complex language quite well. So you can see you do need to be pretty, you know, this band 7 is asking a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. And also, I'd just like to mention that the jump from 6.5 to 7, it on paper, it appears like 0.5, and that's what it is. And it appears quite small. It's only half a point, for example. However, and I think this is why a lot of students get frustrated, because they're like, it's only half a point. I could probably take a test again, and if I just put in extra focus time or just do a little bit more study, I can get that tiny 0.5 improvement, which is what I need. But I think just from personal experience and seeing so many students stuck at 6.5, that's not the case. That 0.5 can, if you want to be absolutely certain, we're talking at least a minimum of 30 days solid study. I mean, of course, it depends. If you're talking language skills, If that's what's dropping, if that's what's preventing you, then we're talking about 30 days. But if it's exam skills, then it could be as little as 3 days of just getting familiar with what's needed and how to write it. So really, it's really up to you as a student to take that responsibility and determine, okay, is it a language skill issue or an exam skill issue?
Yeah. And once you found that out, as Ben says, you can make progress super quickly. I mean, you've had some amazing, well, you were telling me about the story the other day, someone who within 2 weeks or within even less than that.
Oh, definitely. We've had so many. And I feel a little bit bad because I published these but I mean, from the title, it's like, oh, jumps from band 6.5 to 7.5 in 9 days. That was Melissa. But
Yeah.
I always try and stress that, okay, in these cases, I want to inspire you, but also, as I've just been saying, that if it's a language issue that you have, you're not going to have the same results as Melissa, who managed to improve her score by 9 days, in 9 days, or Yvonne, who jumped to from band 6 to 7.5 in 3 days. It's difficult to get these results if you have to work on your language skills, and it's exceptionally difficult if you have to work on both your exam skills and your language skills. So those grades, those episodes we do, they're there to inspire the students, but take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a pinch of salt that each student has a different experience. But
Yeah.
However, if you are working with a solid team that can confidently, but basically with our course, we do offer a guarantee there, so we are obviously confident in our in our results and our preparation method, but we don't say jump to band 7 or it's free in 24 hours, because that's just ridiculous. We offer our course is jump to band 7 or it's free, and it usually takes about 30 days to get through the course, especially if they are implementing everything that we say. But it can be done in as little as 10 days, 7 days, if the student is working fast.
Exactly. Good.
Okay, so moving on to IELTS band score results. Now, if you love statistics, then there's a great site, well, a great page, and it's at IELTS.org/research/test statistics. You could probably just go into Google and put IELTS.org test statistics, and there you're going to see average scores according to gender and exam format, so regarding academic and general.
Who scores better, the girls or the boys?
The females score better. They do have slightly higher scores, which I found surprising, because when I was a general teacher, I noticed that the females, they did grasp concepts quicker, but they kind of lacked the confidence that the guys did. But they were better equipped with, not just with speaking, but in all aspects. And I think it's because women speak more. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to be sexist there, but I think it could be the reason.
That's definitely true. Of course we do. It's quite interesting though, because although I think maybe a lot of the women maybe lack confidence or exam confidence, I think often they might be more precise.
Yes.
So I think they would probably, once they've got the confidence and then they have the precision, then I think those two, that's a winning format.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So moving on, for IELTS academic, the general score, or the average score, is 6.1, which is surprisingly low. And then for IELTS general, the overall is 6.6. So just going into a little bit more detail, for IELTS academic, the listening, the average score is 6.3. For reading, 6.2. For writing, 5.6, which is below the beloved, the high demanded 7. And then for speaking, It's 6 as well, so quite low scores there. And then for the
Yeah, they look
general,
quite low. Yeah.
yeah, what are the scores for general on
General is
average?
all, yeah, general is always a bit higher. So the general, the overall, as you said, was 6.6. So listening 6.8, reading 6.5, both respectable. Writing 6.2, so quite a big difference between the academic writing 5.6 and then
Mm,
this general 6.2, and speaking also higher 6.7.
interesting. And I think if we just focus on the writing, the task 2 question is slightly different. It's going to be
Yes.
more like sciencey, academic based for the writing. But the biggest difference is obviously task 1, whereas in academic you do the graphic, whereas in the general you write a letter. And it just confirms, assuming that this big difference in the points, assuming it's because of the biggest difference, which is task 1, it kind of confirms what we've always been saying here, that the general task 1 is easier because it's letter writing and we've got this specific format and we've got these specific phrases that you need to learn, and it just confirms that it is an easier writing exam than the academic writing exam.
Yeah, and I suppose that really, that if you put the different exams in the context, that does make sense though, because the IELTS academic is really for this professional qualifications or for high level university study, whereas the general training may be for a profession. So not a medical profession, but it may be they're for different purposes, aren't they? The exams.
Exactly. You know what would be really cool to see would be that the examiners give scores back based on this decimal system. So instead of 0.5, 6.5, 7, 7.5, if they did it 6.2, 6.4 or 6.9, and then the students would get a real specific idea of where they're standing. But I guess that's just wishful thinking. I doubt it's going to change.
I think it would be, Ben, I think it would be far more helpful.
Yeah.
Don't you? Then you've really, because, people who've done their exam again and again and again, at least you'd know, okay,
Exactly.
I am moving forward here.
Exactly. And also, this is also wishful thinking, but ideally I would love to see the student get back maybe their exam paper so they could see where they've gone wrong, both for the speaking and the writing. And I think this way they would be able to improve a lot faster, because this is exactly what we do when we're giving feedback on the writing or the speaking. We pinpoint where you as a student are losing points, and this enables you to improve much faster. And it's a shame that I guess they've got a lot on their plate at the moment, but it's a shame you don't get that same detailed feedback in the official exam as you do when you're preparing.
Yeah, you get a report, but it's pretty general, isn't it? It's not actually that helpful.
Exactly. Okay, so moving on. Right. So as you know, nowadays you can take the IELTS indicator test, which I think is a definitely a good way to get started, especially if you are in lockdown at the moment. And you can also do sample tests, and I strongly recommend doing these sample tests from IELTS.org. And also probably using official material such as the Cambridge books, because if you're doing it from the official website or using official books, you're going to be on the right track. I don't want to criticize IELTSTestsOnline.com. I think it's a wonderful service by providing all these tests. But if you are doing, it's better doing those tests than doing no tests. But I think if you want to be absolutely certain that the test you are doing is at the same level of difficulty as you're going to face in the exam, then you need to be going with official material.
Yeah, I'd absolutely endorse that, because I think the danger is that you can get confident doing a certain kind of test, and then you say, okay, that's great, I've got it. And then you come to the exam and you think, oh, hang on a minute, this is different, or it's much harder, and that just gives you more to stress about.
Absolutely. And I was inquiring about getting a reading test done by a test writer, and it's ridiculous amount. It's something like $800, no, probably more, like over $1,000 to get an official test written. And even then, sorry, it wouldn't be official, but it would be by a exam writer who's written tests before, but it was over
Wow.
$1,000. And I'm skeptical whether the other sites have paid that amount to get those official tests and put
Yeah.
not even official tests, but to get them done by exam writers. I'm skeptical. So I just, as I said, doing tests is better than doing no tests, but ideally you want to be doing official tests from Cambridge or from a cambridge.org.
And then if you do the official test, that's going to highlight areas of weakness, I suppose, Ben, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You're going to spot your weaknesses. You can work on those, and as we said before, getting feedback will also speed up this process.
Exactly.
And we've had past students who've done this, and also you're going to sort of like be able to test different strategies. And one strategy that I really want to share was from VNOD. We interviewed VNOD about a month ago. He shared a wonderful strategy for how he got 8.5 in the listening. You're best going to just put into Google IELTS Podcast VNOD and listen to the whole tutorial there. But very, very briefly, he said that he used meditation and yoga to improve his concentration skills. He said,
That's amazing.
Yeah, he said that he broke up the exam by focusing intensely for 10 minutes each section. So after 10 minutes, he just give himself a small breather, maybe look away from the paper, think about something else, and then come back to it. And this like mini reset helped him stay hyper focused for the next 10 minutes. And then finally, which I think was absolutely crazy, and full hats off to him, but he did each listening exam 6 times until he got a minimum of 39 out of 40.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he didn't just stop there, Daphne. He carried on and he would write down all the synonyms from every single test.
That's brilliant.
He discovered that there's about 25 synonyms from each listening test that he did. So after about 4 tests, he had 100 synonyms. And guess who has a list of those synonyms?
He's got that. That's
No,
incredible.
I've got it now.
You've got it. Whoa.
Yes,
Nice
I asked
one.
him. Yeah, I asked him for that list. And
Oh, fantastic.
yes, this is going to be, as I said in the other tutorial, it's going to be incorporated into the IELTS IELTS materials ebook that we give to students once they sign up for the IELTS podcast email list, which I strongly recommend students do, because on that list we offer advice, we give special offers for you to get feedback, for your essay corrections and your speaking feedback, speaking corrections. And now, in this IELTS material PDF, you're going to find those 100 synonyms, which will definitely help you.
That's an absolute gift, because this is the biggest problem, I think, in the reading and in the listening, isn't it? Is you're not going to hear the same words in the question or read the same words in the question as you hear in the listening. And the whole thing is about being aware of these synonyms and at speed. You've got to do this really quickly too, haven't you?
Exactly. And this is another thing that which would come under exam skills, because it's not natural to extract so much information from a single sort of like chunk of audio, because very rarely do you get put in those situations in real life. Very rarely.
True.
So this is
we're
why
not listening intensively like that, are we?
Exactly. So this is a great example of some of these exam skills that you need to develop. All right. So let's just move on. As we said, there's about 40 points available for the listening and for the reading, and doing practice tests is the best way to do that. Obviously, you've got different strategies available online. Be careful though, when you are reviewing these different strategies, be careful not to fall into what we call motion rather than action. And motion is basically when, for example, a student wants to learn how to write a test 2 essay, so they watch 3 hours of tutorials on YouTube, or even they buy a course and watch 5 hours of tutorials. That's motion. That's good. It's useful, but don't get stuck in that state. You need to distinguish between motion and action. And action is when you put pen to paper and get writing. This is why, after about 5 tutorials in our online course, we get students writing and taking action, because we know from experience that it's only through action and feedback are you going to really improve. That's where the real improvement happens.
Yeah, I think that's such good advice. It's very easy to sit there watching something thinking, yeah, great, I'm learning. But until you actually write that down, and test yourself almost by writing that first essay, you're not really going to see how much of that has gone in.
Exactly. It's like an overweight person trying to lose weight by watching tutorials on the keto diet or veganism to lose weight. They're not going to lose weight until they start either doing some sport or changing their diet. Reading those tutorials and watching those videos, they're still going to be overweight.
Makes it sound simple, but you're absolutely right.
And just a side note, the clarification between motion and action. I can't take credit for this. I got it from a great book about habits. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. So if you struggle with getting your house in order, so to speak, if you struggle, and we all do, this is why I was reading the book, and I struggle with being productive all the time. This is why I ended up reading the book, but it goes into it much more detail, and this is where I took a lot of valuable information from that book, and I put it in different tutorials, but I condensed the most important parts down to the first module in our new updated Jump to Band 7 IELTS free online writing course.
That's brilliant. Yeah, there's this whole thing, isn't there, about, slightly different, but about procrastination as well, which is a big thing for so many people. I'll do it later. Yeah, I'll do it later. You go back to this, the Nike thing, the Nike slogan, just do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, just do it. You're going to feel so much better once you start.
Yeah, just to follow this tangent, when I was starting out with IELTS podcast, you have no idea how many projects I failed at before that. And the reason was because I would start it, but I wouldn't finish the project. So when I started the IELTS podcast, my goal was just to get to 100 podcasts. That's it. Now we're well over 300 podcasts.
Wow.
And I would suffer from procrastination because I get bored. I got this shiny object syndrome. So what I'm saying is that we all struggle with this, and it's up to you to sort of like to solve this problem. And I think having a structured plan to follow makes it immensely easier.
Absolutely. It's almost like there's someone's there with you. Same as if you're doing the feedback and you're writing the essays. We're there with you. Come on, where's the next essay? Keep going.
Exactly.
You've committed, and you need to kind of keep moving, don't you?
Exactly. Just one last thing, and then we'll move on to the requirements. But when you get feedback, especially with us, you get a video tutorial back, your own personal video tutorial of your own essay, and it really is like an ex-IELTS examiner looking over your shoulder while you're writing your essay and giving you the guidance. And with that level of input and that level of guidance, all detailed, all specific, all unique to your unique situation, it's difficult not to improve, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult, and because you're improving so fast, you've got this momentum, and you're more motivated, which is a massive factor when it comes to IELTS preparations. I think this is why we get so many students on our podcast as success stories, and they really put it down to like getting the feedback. And one last thing, they've put in the work as well. It's not just a case of buying the course and I've passed IELTS a week later. No, you've got to put in the work as well.
Totally. But hopefully we'll keep you motivated so that you want to keep on going.
Exactly. Okay, so IELTS requirements. We're going to go through this quite briefly, because now, as Daphne and me and myself were talking about before this tutorial, the goalposts are changing because of COVID. Everything's up in the air and up for grabs, basically.
Yeah.
Or out of reach if you're in lockdown. So it really is a crazy situation at the moment.
Yeah, it's so true. And we've been talking about this a lot together, haven't we? And
Yeah.
students have been giving us some really tangible examples of this, where traditionally you'd have said, okay, for university in the UK, you need a band 7. It's definitely for the postgrad study, and for immigration, mostly you need a 7 in most of the papers. But there are a few little loopholes coming in because there's a shortage of students who want to go to university because it may be difficult to travel. So there are vacancies at a lot of these UK universities, I know. And I think you had a story about immigration as well, didn't you? Is that in
Y-
Canada?
Yeah, it was Amandeep who
Yes.
realized that the immigration authorities in Canada were not going to meet their quota because the travel restrictions had come into place, so there wasn't this new influx of immigrants that they would usually receive. So they decided to, in order to meet the quota, they were going to be more flexible with the immigrants they already had in Canada. So they kind of relaxed, or they were less stringent with the requirements. So Amandeep, you need to listen to the whole tutorial, but Amandeep jumped on that immediately and basically rushed and worked as fast as possible to get his score, get his application in, responded to all the requirements that they were sending him, and he basically saw that opportunity. There's a small window of opportunity and he saw it open and he took it.
Yeah.
So that's just one example of how it's become a little bit easier, perhaps, for some students in some situations. And there's just one other thing that I want to add, that, and I've always said that here in the West, that what is black and white, I mean, there are rules, but there's also a little bit of flexibility. Like, admissions boards will, for example, I'll give my personal example. When I got my A-level results, I had a few conditional offers, and then I got thrown into this process called clearing, which a lot of academic students will be aware of, where it's a bit of a free-for-all and you've got to ring up the universities. But in this case, I was ringing them up and I was saying, hey, I've got this and this, will you accept me? I know that to do this course I need these grades, but I will do this and this and this. So it's almost like bargaining, and
Yeah.
this is
Crazy.
yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, it's crazy, really, to be kind of ringing out and selling yourself for these places. But I mean, wow, it's a skill. Yeah.
Exactly. And this, I think, this is quite common in the West, whereas I know in other parts of the world that the rules are rules and there's no negotiation, there's no interpretation. It's like it's black and white. So what I'm saying is that in the West, there is a little bit of room for maneuver, and it's almost looked upon favorably if the student has got enough ambition to start negotiating, or at least offer okay, I missed the grade slightly, but what I'll do to compensate is I'm going to take this course, I'm going to take this course, and I'm going to do this. And it just shows the ambition, but also acumen and enthusiasm. So it's like, okay, do I want a student who meets the requirement and is not even interested, or do I want the student who almost meets the requirement but is just over the moon and dying to get into this course and get into this university? And this whole point, this flexibility that I'm talking about, has expanded due to COVID. Because just one last thing and then we'll move on. I'm sorry to go on a bit, but one last thing, that in the West, as a profit-based system of education, and international students with scholarships or with their own private funds, they bring a lot of money into the system.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, they've got to keep up academic requirements, so they're not teaching a bunch, so the whole class isn't there with no comprehension of English. So on the one hand, they've got to keep up the requirements, but on the other hand, they've got to survive. They've got to make money, and this is never being more important than at this exact moment in time with COVID, with borders closed, with travel restrictions. It's just basically turned the world completely upside down. And this is why we've got the IELTS indicator. So the ball's in your court. That's what I want to say.
Mm. And IELTS, as you said before, that it's the world's main instrument for English language assessment, isn't it? It's an incredibly widely taken exam, and it's extremely highly respected. Um,
Mhm.
and I think we said it's taken in over 140 countries, and 10,000 organisations accept it. So it's worth asking your institution if you haven't got exactly what you want. It's definitely worth asking and seeing if you can find a way around it.
Exactly. So yeah, and there's just let's see. I mean, as we keep saying, there's the IELTS indicator test. There's the life skills. There's different different tests. So you really need to find out what your organization or what your situation is requesting from you, but also
Yes.
in a lot of cases, just stay up to date. This is exactly what Amandeep was doing. He was he was really on the ball with regards to what's happening with his immigration situation. He saw that they've extended the window. He somehow found out that they were being a little bit less strict with the criteria, that they've, by opening up the window, and he jumped on that. And that's how he's managed to get his invite for permanent residency. And just being on the ball in that exact moment has changed the course of his life significantly, because if he gets PR in Canada, it's a game changer.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so I think that's everything. And remember, if you are struggling with IELTS, you're not alone. Come to IELTSPodcast.com, sign up for the newsletter. We send out information every single week with tutorials, with skills, with tips, with success stories, and special offers for essay correction. And remember as well, we've also got the apps where you can get the transcript. Just go to the Google Play Store and put IELTS Ben Worthington. Likewise in the App Store, just put Ben Worthington IELTS and you'll get the newest downloads, you'll get special offers, and it'll honestly make your life a whole lot easier. And by the way, one example of these special offers last week, and we do this quite frequently, but we offer essay corrections for just $5, which is ridiculously low. Normally they're going for $19, but so we offer these corrections for like $5, which is ridiculously low. But the idea is that we get you started, and you can immediately identify where the problems are with regards to your
And
writing.
I'm just going to add a little plea in there. Please don't send me your $5 essay feedback a day before your exam. I can't tell you how many people say, hey, can I have feedback because my exam's tomorrow? And I'm going, no, plan in advance, okay? Send it to us in advance, and then we can help you much more than a day in
Exactly. Good point. Good point. I mean, well done for taking action, but I think the students that get the best results are the ones who, take a plan 10 days, 30 days, whatever, depending on the situation. But the planning is crucial here for success.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's it from Daphne and myself. And yep, just keep moving forward. Remember, action, not motion. You will get there in the end. And you've got Daphne, myself, and Ellen here at IELTS Podcast, who are more than happy to help you keep moving forward and improving. So have a great day and good luck.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.